Welcome to Stories Junction. Let's begin today's story. Let us know where in the world you're tuning in from. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. Let's begin. It was during Lila's brightest laugh that Marcus realized he was no longer part of her narrative. They were at Jonah's Loft party in Portland, the kind that felt curated to seem effortless. String lights draped over exposed beams, a playlist bouncing between Indian jazz and coolers stuffed with craft beers. Lila wore a sapphire dress that shimmered like it had a point to prove, her second cocktail in hand, surrounded by friends who only knew her curated self. Marcus lingered a few feet away, leaning against a brick wall, thumbing his phone. Not because he had anything to check, but because watching her command the room, charm without effort, and glow like their earlier argument over a missed rent payment never happened made his chest tighten. He wasn't angry, just drained, the kind of exhaustion that lingered like fog. Then she said it, intimacy with Marcus. Lila leaned forward, her eyes sharp with mischief. It's like a rare coin. If he can go a week without pissing me off, I might toss him a little. The group erupted in laughter. Someone choked on their drink, and Marcus's name vanished from the conversation. Not even a whisper. She caught his gaze and didn't waver, didn't soften, just lifted her glass in a mock salute, as if she'd won something. Maybe she had. The moment didn't ignite fury in him. No shouting, no storming out when they got home, just a quiet void. Marcus stopped reaching out, stopped offering small gestures like her favorite oat milk latte, shared memes, or a hand on her shoulder during late-night walks. He gave her what she'd already claimed, his absence. And Lila? She seemed to float, as if his silence was a burden shed. For weeks, Marcus became a shadow in their shared apartment. He cooked, paid the electric bill, folded her sweaters, and vanished to the climbing gym for hours. The gym became his sanctuary, the ropes and holds his meditation. In the mirror, he saw himself sharpen, broader shoulders, steadier eyes, not for vengeance but for readiness. One evening, Lila noticed. "You're quiet lately," she said, curled on the couch, a reality show flickering in the background. Her tone was light, almost playful. "I'm here," he replied, eyes on the screen. Physically, she pressed, testing him. "Isn't that what you wanted?" She paused, lips parting, but said nothing. Soon, Lila started lingering at her pottery classes, a new gloss on her lips, a spritz of perfume for quick errands. She forgot how much Marcus had learned from her, how a laugh could mask a lie. But he wasn't trying to unravel her anymore. He knew enough. What Lila didn't see was that Marcus had stopped responding. Not because he was numb, but because he'd learned that reacting was his fatal flaw. She thrived on it, and he was done fueling her. Lila's unraveling wasn't obvious at first. She kept her polish intact, coffee dates with colleagues, Instagram posts with vague quotes about growth, reels of foggy forests, and matcha lattes. But behind a filter, her script was fraying. Marcus had stopped playing his role. She started prodding. "Let's do a weekend trip," she suggested one night over takeout, wearing the velvet top she used to save for date nights. "Clear our heads." Marcus barely looked up from his plate. "I've got plans." Her eyes flickered. "Since when do you make plans without me?" He smiled, small and sure. "Since I realized I could." That weekend, while Lila posted stories from a vineyard with fleeting acquaintances, Marcus sat in a quiet cafe in downtown Portland, passing a sleek folder to Elena Ruiz, a divorce lawyer whose calm precision felt like a blade. "Evidence?" she asked, eyebrow raised. He slid over a small USB drive. Not his, Lila's, from her old laptop she never reset. Inside were months of archived chats from an app she thought was secret, messages with Theo, the tech startup guy with a smug grin and a penchant for overpriced bourbon. Marcus had met him once at a gallery opening, Theo's hand on his shoulder like he was consoling a runner-up. The text filled in the rest. "He's so checked out, it's like I'm living alone. Don't worry, he's oblivious, thinks I'm at spin class. The sex with him is like folding laundry." There were photos, too, one snapped in their own balcony garden while Lila claimed to be journaling inside. Marcus didn't flinch. He didn't rage. He listened to the voice he'd ignored for too long. Not pain, but clarity. Back home, Lila started noticing cracks. Her favorite rose stopped appearing in the fridge. Her streaming account logged her out. Marcus's scarf was gone from the entryway hook, his toothbrush missing from the sink. Yet he was still there, present but untouchable. Her charm turned frantic. She cooked stir-fry, sent him old photos of their camping trip, wore lace on a random Wednesday, even floated the idea of therapy, which she'd once called emotional blackmail. But Marcus wasn't hers to sway anymore. Lila's world didn't crack visibly, not yet. She still moved through Portland's drizzle with her head high, posting latte art and cryptic captions about authenticity. Her laughter still carried at co-working space, happy hours. Her stories still dazzled. But the script she'd mastered, flawless, untouchable, started to falter. Marcus wasn't feeding her cues anymore. He wasn't the quiet backdrop to her spotlight, and that absence gnawed at her, though she'd never admit it. She doubled down, leaning harder into her curated life. A new scarf, a bolder filter, a weekend getaway with friends who didn't ask questions. But the silence at home grew heavier, and she couldn't outrun it. Marcus, meanwhile, was rewriting his own story. The climbing gym wasn't just a refuge now. It was where he rebuilt himself, grip by grip. He'd always been fit, but now his frame carried a quiet strength, his eyes a new kind of focus. He didn't talk about Lila there, didn't need to. The rhythm of chalked hands and taut ropes drowned out the noise of her voice in his head. Outside the gym, he was methodical. He met Elena Ruiz again, this time in her sleek office overlooking the Willamette River. She flipped through the USB drive's contents. Lila's messages to Theo, time-stamped betrayals, photos that pinned her lies to specific dates. "This is airtight," Elena said, her voice steady but impressed. "You've been thorough." Marcus nodded. "I learned from the best." Back at the apartment, Lila started to feel the edges of his withdrawal. His keys weren't always on the hook. His favorite mug stopped appearing in the sink. She'd come home to find the place spotless, the air faintly scented with cedar cleaner. But Marcus was gone, out running at the gym or just busy. She didn't ask where, not at first. Instead, she pushed back with her own performance. She'd linger in the doorway, tossing her hair, telling stories about her day that he no longer responded to. One night, she tried harder, sliding onto the couch beside him, her hand brushing his arm. "We should do something fun," she said, voice honeyed. "Like old times." He looked at her, not cold, just distant. "Old times weren't that fun, Lila." She laughed it off, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of doubt. The evidence Marcus had gathered wasn't just digital. He'd started noticing patterns. Her phone buzzing at odd hours, her sudden need for space on weekends, the way she'd leave her laptop open but angled away. He didn't confront her, he documented. Hotel receipts from a work trip she'd never mentioned. A parking ticket from a neighborhood she had no reason to visit. A screenshot of a Venmo payment to Theo for drinks, dated the night she'd claimed to be at a book club. Marcus didn't need to play detective. Lila's carelessness did half the work. She'd taught him how to read her, and now he was using it against her. One evening, Lila came home to find Marcus at the kitchen table, a glass of bourbon in hand, his laptop closed. The air felt different, charged. "You're home early," he said, his tone neutral. She froze, then smiled, tossing her bag onto the counter. "Missed you," she said, testing the waters. He didn't smile back. "Funny. You've been missing a lot lately." Her laugh was too quick, too sharp. "What's that supposed to mean?" He sipped his drink, eyes steady. "You tell me." She deflected, launching into a story about a coworker's drama. But Marcus wasn't listening. He was watching, cataloging the way her hands fidgeted, the way her voice pitched higher when she lied. That night, Lila's charm offensive kicked into overdrive. She cooked pasta, opened a bottle of Pinot, played his favorite Bon Iver album. She wore the earrings he'd bought her 2 years ago, the ones she used to say were too sentimental for her taste. Marcus ate, nodded, said just enough to keep the conversation alive. But when she reached for his hand, he pulled back, not harshly, just enough. "I'm tired," he said, standing. "Long day." She watched him walk to the bedroom, her smile fading. For the first time, she felt the ground shift beneath her. The next morning, Marcus was gone before she woke up. She found a sticky note on the fridge at the gym. Back later. No warmth, no sign-off. She stared at it, her coffee cooling in her hand. She didn't know he'd spent the morning with Elena, finalizing the paperwork. The divorce filing was almost ready. Clean, precise, built on the foundation of Lila's own words and actions. Elena had warned him, she'll fight dirty when she's cornered. Be ready. Marcus was. He'd already changed the passwords to their joint accounts, redirected his direct deposits, and moved his most sentimental belongings, a watch from his dad, a journal from college, to a storage unit. Lila didn't notice the subtle absences, not yet. By the time Lila started sensing the depth of his detachment, it was too late. She came home one evening to find the apartment lit softly, jazz humming from the speakers. For a moment, her heart lifted. She thought Marcus was cooking, maybe thawing. Then she saw him in the living room, dressed sharper than usual, laughing with a woman she didn't know. The woman was poised, her laugh warm, her hand resting lightly on Marcus's arm. Lila stopped in the doorway, her keys dangling. Marcus glanced up, unruffled. "Oh, Lila, didn't hear you come in." Her smile was brittle, practiced. "I didn't know we were having guests." The woman stood, polite but unfazed. "I'll give you two some space." When she left, Lila's composure cracked. Who the hell was that? Marcus met her eyes, calm as stone. Someone who doesn't play games. Lila's facade didn't shatter right away, but the cracks were spreading. She stormed through the apartment after the woman left, her voice sharp but unsteady. "You bring someone into our home, Marcus?" "Really?" He leaned against the counter, sipping his drink, his calm a wall she couldn't breach. "Our home," he said, eyebrow raised. "The one you've been using as a backdrop for your side projects?" Her breath caught, but she rallied, tossing her hair. "What's that supposed to mean?" "You're paranoid." Marcus didn't bite. He just looked at her, his gaze stripping away the performance. "I'm not the one lying, Lila." She opened her mouth, then closed it, her hands balling into fists. For the first time, she didn't have a script. The next day, Lila doubled down. She posted a glowing selfie from Sunrise Hike, captioned "Finding My Peace." But back home, the apartment felt like a stage with no audience. Marcus was there, but not. Cooking his own meals, leaving for the gym, answering her questions with polite detachment. She tried to reel him back, leaving notes on the counter, wearing his old college hoodie, suggesting a movie night. He'd nod, say, "Maybe," and vanish. Her charm, once a weapon, was losing its edge. She didn't know Marcus had already met with Elena Ruiz again, reviewing the divorce papers now thick with detail. Bank statements, text logs, even a time-stamped photo of Lila and Theo at a rooftop bar while she'd told Marcus she was visiting her sister. Lila's desperation started to show. She'd linger in the kitchen, asking about his day, her voice too bright. "You're different," she said one night, pouring herself wine. "What's going on with you?" He shrugged, chopping vegetables. "Just living." She pressed, leaning closer. "You're punishing me for something. Talk to me." He set the knife down, meeting her eyes. "You want to talk? Tell me about Theo." Her face froze, then she laughed too loud. "Theo? He's just a friend. You're blowing this out of proportion." Marcus didn't flinch. "I'm not blowing anything. I'm just done pretending." He walked away, leaving her staring at the countertop. The evidence was overwhelming now. Marcus had more than texts and photos. Their smart home system had recorded snippets of Lila's calls, her voice casual, mocking. Marcus won't notice. He's too busy playing house. He'd found an email draft she hadn't sent, venting to a friend. He's so predictable, it's suffocating. "Theo gets me." Marcus didn't confront her with it. He didn't need to. The knowledge was enough, a quiet power he carried as he moved through their unraveling life. He'd already secured the apartment lease in his name, transferred his savings, and packed a go bag he kept at the gym. Lila was too busy curating her image to notice. One morning, a courier arrived at Lila's office, a sleek co-working space filled with plants and exposed brick. Her colleagues glanced up as she signed for a thick envelope, her smile tight. Inside were the divorce papers, crisp and merciless, listing assets Marcus had already protected: the apartment, his car, their shared investment account. A separate page detailed her affair with Theo: dates, locations, screenshots. Her hand shook as she read, her assistant hovering nearby. She snapped the folder shut, her face a mask, but the room felt smaller, the air thinner. She called Marcus, her voice low. "We need to talk. Now." He didn't answer. She texted, "This is a mistake. Let's fix this." No reply. That evening, Lila came home to find her key didn't work. She fumbled, tried again, then banged on the door, her pulse racing. "Marcus!" she shouted, neighbors peeking through blinds. No response. She called, left voicemails, first angry, then pleading. Inside, Marcus sat at the kitchen island, coffee in hand, watching the doorbell camera feed on his phone. He didn't smirk or gloat. He just observed, the same way he'd watch her laugh at Jonah's party. She wasn't crying yet, but the edge was there, her voice cracking in the last message. "Please, just let me in." He saved the footage, not for cruelty, but for clarity, a record of the moment Lila realized she wasn't in control. The next day, Elena emailed Lila's lawyer, a junior associate who seemed out of her depth. Attached was a timeline of Lila's infidelity, backed by receipts, a hotel charge from a girl's trip, GPS data from her phone, audio clips of her voice, sharp and careless. "If Marcus ever figures it out, I'll just cry. He's soft like that." There was no spinning this. Lila's lawyer advised her to settle, but she refused, insisting she could explain it to a judge. She didn't know Marcus wasn't fighting for revenge. He was fighting for freedom. Lila tried to rewrite the narrative. She showed up at the apartment, makeup subtle, wearing a sweater like she was auditioning for remorse. "I messed up," she said through the door's intercom. "I was lost, Marcus. Let's work through this." He didn't open the door. "There's nothing to work through," he said, voice steady. "You made your choices." She leaned closer, voice breaking. "You're throwing us away over a mistake." He paused, then said, "You threw us away. I'm just cleaning up." The intercom clicked off. She stood there, the Portland rain starting to fall, soaking her sweater. For the first time, she felt the weight of her own script collapsing. Lila's world began to crumble in ways she couldn't curate. The divorce papers sat like a stone in her desk drawer, but she couldn't ignore the fallout. Her colleagues whispered, their glances sharp with curiosity. The office, once a stage for her charisma, felt like a courtroom. She tried to spin it, wearing brighter lipstick, laughing louder at lunch, but the mask was slipping. Her Instagram, still polished with Portland's misty bridges and artisanal coffee, couldn't hide the truth. Marcus had outplayed her. The assets she'd taken for granted, the apartment, the car, even the streaming subscriptions, were locked down. She'd underestimated him, and the cost was mounting. At home, or what used to be home, Lila was a stranger. Her key didn't work, her voicemails went unanswered, and the doorbell camera caught her every desperate knock. She moved into a cramped studio across town, the kind with thin walls and a faint smell of mildew. Her mornings, once filled with curated routines, were now rushed, her coffee instant, her mirror reflecting a face she barely recognized. She texted Marcus late at night. "I didn't mean for this. Can we just talk?" No reply. She tried again, her words softer. "I miss you. I messed up." Silence. Theo, the man she'd gambled on, had vanished. New city, new number, ghosted without a trace. Her safety net was gone. Lila tried to fight in court. She hired a lawyer, a slick type who promised to minimize the damage. She wore a muted blazer to the hearing, her eyes wide with practiced remorse. "It was a mistake," she told the judge, voice trembling just enough. "I was confused, under pressure." She glanced at Marcus, expecting a crack in his resolve, but he sat stone-faced, his lawyer Elena Ruiz at his side. Elena presented the evidence with surgical precision. Texts, photos, audio clips of Lila's voice, cold and calculating. Marcus is so easy to handle. He'll never suspect. The judge's expression hardened. Lila's lawyer fumbled, her defense unraveling. Marcus spoke only once, his voice steady. "I'm not here to punish her. I just want to move on." His restraint was a blade, cutting deeper than anger. The verdict was brutal. Lila lost the apartment, half her savings, and the life she'd built on borrowed confidence. Her friends, once quick to like her posts, drifted away. The gossip spread. Theo's name, the affair, the divorce papers served at work. She tried to rebuild her image, posting about healing and self-discovery, but the likes dwindled. Her world shrank to the studio's peeling wallpaper and the hum of a cheap fan. She dated, briefly, but the men felt like echoes, too shallow, too self-absorbed, or worse, too much like her. She saw herself in their deflections, their charm, and it stung. Marcus, meanwhile, was building something new. He sold the apartment, too heavy with memories, and moved to an airy loft near the Pearl District, all light and clean lines. His mornings started with black coffee and the scent of rosemary from a small herb garden he'd planted. He volunteered at a community center, teaching kids to climb, their raw energy reminding him of a younger, hungrier version of himself. He wasn't running from the past. He was reshaping it. His brother, Sam, noticed the change. "You're not just surviving," Sam said over beers one night. "You're living." Marcus smiled, small but real. "Took me long enough." He started writing, not for anyone else, but for himself. Notes on his phone, reflections in a leather journal. The words came slow at first, then steady. Thoughts on trust, on silence, on the weight of letting go. He dated cautiously, meeting Nora, a quiet photographer who listened more than she spoke. She didn't demand his story. She waited for it. When he told her about Lila, she didn't flinch or pity him. "Sounds like you found your way out," she said, her hand on his. That night, he felt something loosen, not pain, but the last thread of guilt for staying too long. Lila saw him once, by chance, outside a bookstore in the Hawthorne district. He was with Nora, helping an older man with a heavy bag, his laugh light, unguarded. Nora's hand brushed his, easy and unforced. Lila froze, clutching a journal she'd bought on impulse. He didn't see her, or if he did, he didn't care. Her knees buckled, not from love, but from the sharp sting of irrelevance. That night, she drank too much wine and sent a message. No pretense this time. "Can we meet? I need to say something." Marcus saw it, his thumb hovering over the screen, then set the phone down. He didn't know her closure. The final blow came months later. Jonah, the friend who'd thrown the Loft party, was hosting an engagement party. Lila was invited, less out of want and more out of pity. She went, hoping to reclaim some of her old spark. Marcus was there, unannounced in a tailored jacket, Nora on his arm in soft linen. Their presence didn't demand attention. It reshaped the room's gravity, calm, whole, undeniable. Lila stood by the bar, her drink untouched, watching. She approached, her smile fragile. "Marcus," she said, voice thin. He nodded, polite. "Lila." Her eyes flicked to Nora, then back. "I just wanted to—" He raised a hand, gentle but firm. "You don't need to say anything. Some things just end." He turned, his arm around Nora, and walked away, leaving Lila alone in the crowd's hum, her story no longer his. Lila's life didn't rebuild the way she'd hoped. The engagement party marked a turning point, not a dramatic collapse, but a quiet erosion. She left early, her heels clicking on Portland's wet pavement, the glow of Jonah's loft fading behind her. Her studio apartment greeted her with its familiar hum of solitude. Dim lights, a half-empty wine bottle, the faint buzz of her phone with notifications she no longer checked. She'd scrubbed her Instagram of the old Lila, replacing party shots and sunsets with quotes about resilience. But the facade felt hollow. Her followers dwindled, her messages went unanswered, and the city that once felt like her stage now seemed indifferent. She was no longer the woman who dazzled under string lights. She was a shadow of that performance, living in a space too small for her old ambitions. She tried to move forward. Therapy came first, a soft-spoken woman who nodded as Lila blamed her impulsiveness on a chaotic childhood, on the pressure to be perfect. But the sessions only circled the truth. She betrayed someone who'd anchored her, not because she was lost, but because she craved the applause of someone new. Dating didn't fill the void. The men she met were fleeting, charming but shallow, or earnest but dull. Each one mirrored a piece of her she didn't want to face. She saw Marcus in their hesitations, their guarded smiles, and it burned. She stopped going out, her world shrinking to work, the grocery store, and the blue glow of her laptop screen. One night, after too much wine, Lila cracked. She wrote a letter, not a text this time. Pen on paper, her handwriting shaky. "I'm sorry. I didn't know what I had. Can we talk just once?" She mailed it to Marcus's new address, a loft she'd found through a mutual friend's slip. Days passed, then weeks. No reply. The letter sat in Marcus's desk drawer, unopened but not discarded, a quiet reminder of what happens when someone bets on being indispensable and loses. Lila didn't know he'd moved on, not just from her, but from the version of himself that needed her validation. Marcus's life, by contrast, had found a rhythm. His loft near the Pearl District was a sanctuary. High ceilings, morning light, the scent of coffee and fresh herbs. He'd started running at dawn, the Willamette River glinting beside him, his breath steady. His work at the community center grew. The kids he mentored looking to him not just for climbing tips, but for advice on navigating their own fractured lives. He saw his younger self in their hunger, their need to prove something, and he guided them with a patience he'd once lacked. His brother, Sam, became a constant. Thursday beers turned into late-night talks about dreams, regrets, and the kind of life worth building. "You're not just back," Sam said one night. "You're better." Marcus nodded, sipping his stout. "I'm free." Nora was more than a partner. She was a mirror who didn't distort. She didn't push for his past, but held space for it. Her quiet strength a contrast to Lila's calculated charm. When he shared the full story, Jonah's party, the affair, the divorce, she listened, her hand steady on his. "You didn't just survive her," she said. "You found yourself." That night, he didn't cry, but he felt a weight lift, a final release of the guilt he'd carried for loving too long. They cooked together, took walks at dusk, built a life that didn't need to be posted or performed. It was enough. Lila saw him one last time, months later, at a farmer's market in southeast Portland. He was with Nora, picking out tomatoes, his laugh soft as he teased her about her cooking. They moved with an ease that Lila had never known with him, their hands brushing without effort. She stood by a stall of wilting flowers, her scarf loose, her face bare of makeup. He didn't notice her, or if he did, he gave no sign. She wanted to call out, to say something, anything, but her voice caught. The moment passed, and they disappeared into the crowd. That night, she didn't drink. She sat on her couch, staring at the wall, and for the first time, she didn't try to rewrite the story. She let end. Years later, Marcus's life had settled into something solid, not flashy but full. He'd started a small blog, not for fame but for clarity, essays on trust, growth, the quiet power of walking away. It found a small audience, people who'd been burned and were rebuilding. He and Nora were engaged, their plans simple, a small ceremony, a life built on presence, not performance. Lila faded from his thoughts, her laugh at Jonah's party a distant echo, no longer sharp enough to cut. He didn't need her regret or her tears. He'd given himself what she never could, peace. Lila, meanwhile, lived in the aftermath. Her studio became a rental she could barely afford, her job a grind she endured. She stopped posting, her phone no longer a lifeline. She tried writing too, a journal, not for show, but it was halting, filled with half-finished thoughts. She didn't date, didn't chase the spotlight. She learned to live with the echo of her own choices, the certainty she'd once leaned on, now a ghost. She didn't hate Marcus. She envied him, not for what he had, but for what he'd become, whole. Her story wasn't over, but it was quieter, stripped of the dazzle she'd once thought defined her. And in that quiet, she began, slowly, to face herself.